Metropolitans, the New York Mets didn't really have the best weekend in Seattle with the bats falling asleep. Offensive production was at a standstill. And, well, Brandon Nimmo is feeling it more than anyone. A new report reveals his thoughts coming out of the All-Star break with his downward spiral of offensive production. And also, we have an update of a recently DFA'd pitcher, Shintaro Fujinami. We're breaking all that down on this edition of Mets Digest. What's going on, everybody? My name is Slobo Boys. Thank you so much for rocking with me. If you're down with the orange and blue, myself alongside Mike D'Angelo, we're building a great thing here at Mets Digest, but we can't do it without your help. So if you're watching right now, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Don't be that person in that situation who watches the content without hitting subscribe. That makes us know what you want to see and to make sure that you can share the content with other people. That's definitely super important. Okay, let's get into everything that happened this weekend because I got a lot on my mind. But first things first, recently DFA pitcher Shintaro Fujinami posted on his Instagram account. If you were following the team, even though he was kind of one of the David Stearns projects of 2024, didn't really have an opportunity to be called back up to the show and was DFA'd around that trade deadline flurry of roster moves and changes. And even though I thought he would have been our comeback player of the season, it was one of the predictions I got totally wrong. But posting on his Instagram account, I got to say that my Japanese is pretty rudimentary. I think I studied Japanese for like a semester in school. So I use the powers of Google Translate here. I'm just calling it how I see it. Got to be honest with you. It looks like it was a situation where he wanted to update everything that was happening in his career, but he had to make the difficult decision to actually acknowledge the DFA and what's next for him. Just giving out a shout out to his fans and supporters. Felt like he didn't want to keep them in the dark intentionally. And basically something I had translated says along the lines of, so I got to say with a grain of salt because Google Translate is not perfect. Quote, from now on, I'll continue to make it upon myself to believe that my life belongs to no one else, making mistakes, working hard, and persevering in my challenges. And no one likes to lose their jobs. So shout out to Shintaro Fujinami for being a bigger person about that, because I can understand how someone might be encouraged to not say anything at all. Well, I don't know about you fans. I watched that Seattle series this weekend where we went 2 whole games without scoring a run. 2 back-to-back shutouts. That's definitely something that you want to see all the time, with Jeff McNeil being the only offensive production in 3 days. And you can call it what you want. You can say Seattle's a resurgent team. They won the deadline. We're tired from the road trip. We don't particularly do well on the West Coast. Yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, you got to win games. It's a weird feeling because you ever heard of situations where ties feel like losses? Well, we only went 4-6 on the road trip, which isn't the end of the world, but seeing how we can go and score 9 runs in Colorado and beat around the Cardinals to drop 3 games straight where just having 1 or 2 would suffice was pretty frustrating. And there's no one as frustrated right now than Brandon Nimmo. Brandon Nimmo, remember him? We love Nimmos. Nimmos has been doing it for years. I totally saw him in Las Vegas back when the Mets had the AAA Vegas 51s out there. People were in the conversation of having him as a captain or co-captain, one of the leaders of this team, a man with so much hustle. No one ever calls into question whether or not Brandon gives 100%, but let's be absolutely truthful what's going on. Ever since the All-Star break, he has been a different person. One, he was moved down behind Francisco Lindor, with Francisco Lindor being the leadoff spot. It felt like Mendoza figured out the 1-2 punch. It was a hot pairing that really put up those offensive numbers we're come so used to here. But ever since that break, for whatever reason, I'm not sure if the episode where he fainted in the beginning of the season has anything to do with that. I don't think so. I think it's the 2 very far apart. It definitely felt like it was a different case of 2 different Brandons. This one comes from NJ.com. Just put some number context into the production of what Brandon Nimmo's been doing the past couple of weeks. And it says, I give it up to Jimmy Haskell. He says, after a sterling first half in which he posted a 130 OPS plus, a 248, 361, and 454 line, and 16 home runs and 63 RBI, Nimmo has struggled mightily at the plate, a 21 games since the All-Star break. He has 12 hits across 95 plate appearances, including 3 extra base hits, good for a 35 OPS plus, with 100 being the average, and a 152, 284, 474 line. So, what that means, if you're not really into a stat person, I mean, it's kind of night and day if you just don't really know the situations. But the idea is that there are a lot of pop flies if you saw those games, a lot of instances where Brandon is not advancing at all. And I don't want to use the term easy outs, but the confidence after seeing the first half of Brandon, for me as a fan, has dipped a bit. And I got to give it up to Nims because, again, this is something where you can let it eat at you, right? You heard about leaning in. You heard about trying to do too much. You heard about people going so far when they start a slump and it becomes worse. Because Brandon does not slump all the time, but when he does, they tend to be deep grooves. And so it really can be a mental situation. In fact, he was speaking to The Athletic a couple days ago about this recent run of form or lack thereof. And I'm going to bring it up here. Not to bury him. I like the fact he's willing to acknowledge his struggles. He says, as how he's feeling, the usually cheerful outfielder didn't bother with optimism. Terrible, he said. I expect more of myself, and I'm not working at it every day. I should say I am working at it every day, excuse me. It's just not good enough. I'm one of the leaders on this team. I'm supposed to come through and do better, and I'm not. I'm going to do everything in my power to do better and finish strong. Well, I love the words, man. And as someone who's more of a positive Mets fan on the scale, I go, yeah, you're going to come back. You're just that good. You got that huge contract. You're able to do anything you want to by saying being a role player team, moving out to left. And we've seen you when you're hot. It's only going to happen again. But it's really one of those things where the vibe has changed. I'm not sure if it started with the Kodai Senga injury, but it felt like Grimace has left the building. And maybe there was some pressure to produce like how you were doing when the team was hot. And I wonder if it's a mental thing, not just for Brandon, but for the team itself. It's a team-based game. We saw Alonso struggle for the past couple weeks. And even though Jeff McNeil, or Happy Jeff, has recovered, the first part of his season really wasn't strong as well. I'm not sure if it's worthy of a new team meeting. I'm not going to go that far. But it is troubling or worrying that everyone always feels nothing can ever come together. On this channel, for the past couple weeks, we're talking about the whole pitching situation, and we tried to piecemeal how the team's improving and what we can do to add on. And as soon as everything seems to be going, at least the foundation's built on the arm side of things, the arm barn, if you will. It's a deep cut for those who don't know. The offense goes to sleep. 3 games in Seattle with 1 run across an entire weekend is abysmal. And that's something that there's people all over the sports talk field who are like, the Mets are the worst ever. I'm not saying that, but it is to say that, hey, look, maybe there's something beyond the pale there. Now, if you look at the traditional or overall production from Brandon Nimmo, you could probably tell him that it's been a serviceable hand. Here is somebody that doesn't have the pressure of being the number one offensive option. And when he's not the number one offensive option, he can definitely thrive and be a sneaky person with the bat. And the home run production, 16 as it is right now, it's really good. And we were scoring on 6 runs on average like we were doing the last month or so. These were just good enough. But again, we want to be able to see Brandon happy. We want to be able to have the production we can rely on because look, the question of whether or not we are a playoff team is now out the window. There were a time where we were number 1 in the wild card standings and there were number 2 in the division. You have to pretend that you are. And I know you can say, well, if we're treading water, we weren't doing well, we can maybe save some of the sauce for 25. You don't have that. We don't have that goodwill with the fan base. You don't have that goodwill with the team members. A lot of these guys are on 1-year contracts. We have to decide, pedal to the metal, play as if you're going. And so if you go a weekend with scoring only a run, then that's going to call really harsh questions. But props for Brandon for being a leader and saying, look, I know what's going on. I know what is expected of me and what is actually happening and what's actually occurring and trying real hard to correct that. Let me ask you a question. If you're Carlos Mendoza, what would you do? Is it a situation of a couple of nights off? Is it a thing where just a product of just a really rough schedule? Or is it something deeper? Would you try to have Nimmo come off the bench? Would you try to make him more of that 4th outfielder just temporarily? I know you can't make that an everyday situation. You paid him way too much. But would you have a situation by just saying, hey, look, 3 or 4 days, we're going to have you sit, and then we're going to have everyone rotate, I would like to know, because when someone is not at the level they want to and they know it, that could be a very dark spiral. And if the team itself wakes up out of their offensive slumber, we're going to need Brandon Nimmo to really be the one that pushes over the line. So, what do you think? Let us know in the comments below. Thank out to everyone who checks out this channel, Mets Digest. My name is Lobo Boyce. It means the world to me that you're here rocking with me. Let me know what you do with Brandon. I'm out, but as always, until next time, it's LGM to the bitter end.